Um, Sort of bringing this back to testing and feedback in QA, did you receive any kind of really important or like game changing feedback from kind of members of the Beatles
Mm.
family or still living Beatles during development? Because I had to imagine they were pretty closely kind of tied up in how this game was going to be
Yeah,
created, right?
yeah, they totally were. Yeah, I don't know the exact story, and I know we talked a little bit about this when we first started discussing, but I do know that Danny Harrison, George Harrison's son, was kind of present at the impetus of the conversation of making this title. And I'm totally probably making this up. I have this memory of hearing, maybe from Alex Rogopoulos himself, the co-founder of Harmonix, that they were like out on some vacation in some island, which sounds luxurious, but like Alex Rogopoulos sitting there with Danny Harrison having a margarita or something and just started talking about, the Beatles Rock Band. And I want to say that it was even Danny's idea. And the other thing that Danny was really excited about was the idea of actual guitar interface. So instead of just the 5 buttons, like playing an electric guitar and having, you try to play the chords and the lead parts, 2 different tracks, which we eventually did in Rock Band 3, which was a lot of fun and a really unique project. But yeah, that conversation started, I want to say, with Danny Harrison, and then, started talking to Apple and all of them. And the one thing I do recall in terms of feedback, in terms of like actual tangible feedback about the game, Yoko Ono did come into the office one day, and I remember I was like away from my desk. I was so pissed. I missed her walking through the hallways, but me and a couple of guys actually took an opportunity, I want to say with my brother too, to just like walk by the boardroom that Yoko Ono was in, just to like get a glimpse of Yoko. And so, we did that, and just like, we're like, that's Yoko, and just get walking. So nervous and anxious about it.
Can't pass up that up.
Yep. We saw Yoko. But she had artistic feedback. So obviously we're representing the Beatles as these 3D characters. And so she had some direct feedback around John Lennon, which was like very interesting feedback and totally legit. Basically, she was like, those are not John Lennon's eyes. Those are not John's eyes. And we were like, I remember the artists in the team, in the project were like, what is that? What? They're not his eyes. And she's like, they're like something like they're dead. Like their eyes have no feeling. They're no emotion. Those are not John's eyes. And so it was either one person or a team of people. They buckled down to fix his eyes and get it right. And so they analyzed video footage of his eyes and how they move, how they squint, when he's smiling, how they look, when he's frowning, how they look. And I want to say they did it for everybody because it worked. Like, you can just look at John Lennon's 3D character, and it's not just this, this strange puppeteer version of him. It is, you're feeling like that's John Lennon. And so that's the kind of stuff that you're not just making a video game about the Beatles. Like, you're making a video games for the Beatles, like with the Beatles, and to be able to have the trust of the families of the Beatles and their input, and then accepting that input and going back to them and like getting the thumbs up from Yoko Ono that John's eyes look good. Like, that's like, it really makes you feel like you're doing something special. So yeah, that they were absolutely involved. And I do recall also George Harrison's wife was present at like the reveal at E3, and I got to like even demo it for like, it was an insane project. I feel like I peaked early. There was one memory of me like actually in a luxury suite at a hotel, demoing it to the Beatles Rock Band, the finished product, to Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, his wife. And I found myself literally between them, Tom Hanks playing drums and Rita Wilson singing harmonies with me, because it was the first first game that we did vocal harmonies for, and I was, because I'm a vocalist, that was like what I got to work on, so I knew it really well. So I got this crazy chance to sing next to Rita Wilson, and she was like getting all excited at the end of the song. She's like, what does that mean? She's looking at the results screen. I'm like, oh, that says that we got like 15 out of 20 vocal harmonies. That's like insane. Like, and she's like, that's good. And I was like, yeah, that's good. And she's like, amazing. And she like gives me a big hug. And I'm just like, that's Tom Hanks. This is Rita Wilson. This is strange. So
Well,
yeah.
the question I have to ask is, did you guys play Lovely Rita?
Oh, I don't think so.
That would
I
have been
don't think so.
perfect,
I don't
right?
think it
That
was
would have
in
been
the
perfect.
original song list, but yeah, missed
Yeah.
opportunity.
Missed opportunity. Oh well, but yeah,
Yep.
we had talked a little bit before recording that you kind of had that story in your
No.
pocket, and I originally thought that it was going to be kind of an audio feedback thing, like, oh, the sound needs to be tweaked a little bit, but
Uh,
instead it was kind of this personal, almost kind of emotional piece of feedback, like, oh, John's eyes aren't right, which is
yeah.
it's that's really interesting, right? Because it goes beyond the music,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you really did have to capture their personas
Yes.
very accurately, right? Because it was beyond simply, they made incredible albums, but they were also kind of this worldwide force, and anyone could pick any of the four of them out in a crowd,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that was really, really cool. Just
And
hearing
very
that.
important, very important details.
Yeah.
When you said it earlier, Stefan, like your parents had the CDs. My parents had the vinyls because they're a little bit of age gap. But
Well, my dad probably had the vinyls too, but he worked for BMG in like the 90s. So as soon as CDs came
Oh,
out, he was like, yep, I'm
nice.
just going to go straight to digital. So he was way
yeah,
ahead of the
That's
curve on
funny.
that. But go ahead. Yeah.
definitely better
Yeah.
in terms of quality, different quality.
Different.
Quality,
But
yeah.
what's interesting is it was a pathway for you, right? So like, yeah, you could have listened to the CDs or the vinyls or whatever it is, but at the time you probably were more into video games. So it was a delivery method to get that, the history and culture and something to an audience that either younger and interested in gaming, or they're really passionate about being immersed in something that they're excited about. So when you talk about Tom Hanks and trying to get in there, he was probably passionate about the Beatles and wanting to get access and see that and being able to play with them, right? That's a whole different level of immersion. I know Dave Perry, when we had our very first episode, he talked about getting the call from Neverland Ranch about Michael Jackson wanting to play The Matrix, right? So it's like these people, like he probably was really into the Matrix series at the time, right? So there's this connection of bringing just aspects of that was more pop culture, being the Matrix and whatnot. But that level of quality is so important because it can break the illusion, the immersiveness, and the importance of that, right? So when you talk about not wanting to like mess up the guitar, right? Like and that was a big part of Guitar Hero. It sounded awful if you missed if you missed a couple of chords, like and you fail quickly. But you still need that cues, those cues, that the information, we call it like feedback, back to the user about, hey, you are messing up, right? You're not hitting this. Here's, try to get them back on course and whatnot. So I love those level of details while still retaining quality and the nod to them and saying, yeah, here, we're not going to mess up your legacy.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate
Yeah,
that stuff.
that's a really good point. It's we didn't take our jobs as QA testers as okay, we needed to get to like a reasonable level of quality. Like this was for our own ability to sleep at night. We had to make sure this was at the
Yeah.
utmost premium quality. Like, and it wasn't just like
quality.
Yeah, quality of quality with a capital Q. So that was it was super unique, and I think that everybody that worked on it, whether you had an interest in the Beatles or not, you just knew that you were working on something special.